for you.
Yeah, totally. I'm the same way. It's like I have things that I need done, so let's get those done.
Yeah.
And that is very much the relationship that we have with Poetic Spirits. I mean, when I was talking about my initial work with them, the reason it was problematic was I wasn't giving them shit to do. They would come and they would hang out for a while, and then they've got time in their hands, and they're hanging around anyway, so they're going to find something to do. They're going to get into some kind of mess. Yeah, so if you don't give them tasks and keep them busy, you know, they're like
they get into trouble.
Yeah, they're like kids. You have to give them like crayons and paper and let them go play in the corner. Because if you don't, they're going to be painting on the walls.
Exactly.
And, yeah, keep them occupied. And that's a good, I think that's good for everyone in terms of just like looking at, okay, evil is error. I talked about what Crowley said with the scuba suit. I mean, our bad habits and our vices can work for us if we use them in the right way. The question is just, how is this vice being implemented? What role does it play in my life? You know, I like to say about the 7 deadly sins that they cancel each other out. You know, you can only have so much sloth and gluttony before lust and pride come into it, and you're going to have to do some sit-ups, or you're not going to be able to satisfy those urges. So you know, you just have to practice them all at once. They work. It's a great system.
Yeah, you just got to find a balance.
Yeah, well, it's all about, like you said, finding a job for this. If this exists in your life, and one of the things that people find, I think, if you transgress your values, and you continue to, in a dynamic, engaging way, transgress your values, you're going to find that there are certain aspects of your personality that just never go away. Like, whatever your belief system happens to be at the time, there's these things that are still always a part of it. So the question is, okay, these are the things I can't get rid of. So these are the parts of my essential nature. So where do I put them to use? How do I actualize them? And you know, in Thelema, when you're looking for your true will, that's important information. What I always like to say is that part of the reason for the total self-destruction that happens with crossing the abyss is, you know, what's left is the essence that just is indestructible. What can't be destroyed? The purest spiritual essence of a person. And that's kind of the end goal to that, is you remove all extraneous stuff and you build up from the ground floor, pretty much. But that's a long process. And of course,
you have to have guts to
have guts.
test your limits.
And you have to have goals.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have goals, you can't put things to work because you're not going anywhere with them. I mean, if you don't have jobs for them to do, you can't just make up jobs. So, you know, they'll catch on to that. So that's where people have to have a clear idea of, like, what do I want? What Crowley said about the AA is we're supposed to be finding the next step. And in larger cosmic sense, that's true of finding the next step for humanity. Where's the society going? Where are we going as spiritual beings? Stuff like that. But in a more pragmatic, practical sense, we've got to be looking at the next step in, like, what am I doing tomorrow to make my goals work out? What am I going to do later tonight? You know, like, what's the next thing that I need? If this is my end point, what's the next step that I take to get there? And that forces people, and that really, and Poetic Magic especially, really forces people to deal with that. If you got to find a job for the demon, you got to know what the next thing is. If you tell the demon, I want to be a rock star, it's not going to be that easy. If you tell the demon, you know, okay, I need this guitar, I need a bass player, so help me find a bass player, stuff like that. Piece by piece, you can build it together. Whereas if you just give them the long-term goal, they may be at a bit of a loss for where to move. They have to be managed and directed. This is where management skills come in very handy. And, you know, it sounds cheesy, but, I mean, there's a lot of books about management out there, which are, you know, they're geared toward the business sort of crowd or whatever, but this can be useful for black magic and looking into these things. It's not, the idea of managing people working for you, which is what these demons are if we're doing our magic correctly, like, it's totally transferable. It's not because they're supernatural entities doesn't mean that it's any different when you give them jobs to do or tell them what to do. Or the same rules apply. We've all had bosses that we like working for, that we're motivated to work for, and bosses who we would fuck over at the first opportunity, or we'd like to see them fail because we don't really jive with them, we don't really like them. I think that's why it's important to get to know the demons as individuals, because when we do that, we get a little more of a sense of, like, you know, maybe this spirit can do all the things that I want it to do, but we just don't click. You know, we don't have that good energy. I don't know how much I trust it. Like, you know, stuff like that. Like, maybe it will do what I say this time because it's being compelled, but maybe it's gonna, like, fuck with the program later. Like, I don't know. You know. So it's important to know that you have those kind of chemistries with spirits. So, and that's not just true of demons. It's true of everything. I mean, Crowley talks about. I think it is actually the god Jupiter that he's talking about, where he says, you know, when he was working with Layla Waddell, he says this was a really important figure for her because he's very involved with music. And he's like, I'm not really musically inclined, so my communications with that God aren't going to be the same because it has this medium, it's part of its essential nature of working with her that it just doesn't have with him. So, and that's the question. We find out what's the best medium for me to interact with this entity. What happens in my life. Although I will say that Crowley also cautions us about just playing to our strengths. I'm a writer, I write, so if I just worked with Thoth all the time, then that would be good for me in my writing, but at the same time, I'm not going to strengthen those other parts. It doesn't lead to a well-rounded system. And I think in any long-term ceremonial magic, balancing the elements is a really important part. In Liber 90, Crowley says that my adepts stand with their feet below the hells and their head above the heavens. You've got to reach for the infernal and the celestial. You can't just do one. It's got to be a balance struck. It's this kind of thing where you get a solid foundation. I think most magical blow-ups, magical flare-outs, magical burnouts are just caused by a fundamental imbalance in the person's work, where they put too much in one column and the whole thing tips over. And you can really see that happening with a lot of people, I find. Although there are periods of that. I keep saying, and people will always warn you about that, blow-ups working with the occult, blow-ups working with ceremonial magic. The reality is, if you don't lose your mind a couple of times, then you're probably not doing it right, or you're not doing anything exciting. Just never wanting that to happen that's not a reality. If you're going to push the limits, you're going to challenge yourself. There's also going to be times that you make mistakes and fuck up, and you bite off more than you can chew. That's just going to be part of the basic reality of the situation. That's how you know that it's working. Because if that never happens, then, what are you doing? It's like when, as one person I know commented at one point, you never hear people go online and talk about their magical failures or their fuck-ups. They're like, oh, I did this ritual and it just didn't work at all. And the fact that, the absence of that is conspicuous and troubling, because, if you look at a top physicist who has an experimental laboratory, all of themselves, and all this equipment they can work with, and all the stuff that they're doing, and they're scientists doing scientific experiments, every experiment they do, even if they're the best physicists in the world, doesn't work. They'll have lots of failures. In fact, that's how they build their ideas and they build their systems, is by looking at those failures, measuring those failures, and seeing, what went wrong, how do I do this better the next time? If someone can literally say they've never failed at trying anything, then that doesn't even make any sense. Then you're just lying, It's like expecting to read a book on how to play guitar and being able to pick up the guitar and just play it. That's not going to happen. You're going to sound crappy for a while. You learn, even if you're good at playing the guitar, you want to learn a new song. Maybe it's not going to sound great right away. You're going to have to get into the flow of it, get the feel for it, and stuff like that. And that's very true of magic as well. Even having a lot of experience working with different occult systems, you pick up a new system, it's going to take time to figure it out. And to have any other expectations, or for that not to fit into someone's expectations of what they're going to deal with when they work with the occult, is just insane to me. It's just obvious.
I think we can agree that evil is entirely subjective. Given the case of the four evil princes, they're only evil in relation to their counterparts. So, given that evil is entirely subjective, what's your opinion of the sort of modern incursion of schools of thought that we're evil for the sake of being evil? And do you think that